No one expected that a seemingly simple administrative decision would become the catalyst plunging an entire nation into chaos. It wasn't war, nor was it a natural disaster. It was merely a unilateral ban. Cambodia announced the complete closure of its border with Thailand and halted all fuel imports. The result? A full-blown crisis spreading like an oil slick. Silent, shapeless, but just as painful and exhausting as any armed conflict. In the city of Poipet, once hailed as the economic gateway of the border region, the streetlights have gone dark for 3 consecutive nights. The black markets have fallen silent, stalls stand empty, and the hum of diesel generators echoes like the labored breath of a body on the verge of collapse. Crowds gather at the border gates, not to trade or travel, but desperately trying to buy a few bottles of clean water, hurriedly tucked into suitcases, smuggled like contraband. On streets that once bustled with tourists, now only weary figures remain. Hollow eyes, slow steps, and hunger creeping into every kitchen corner. There's no war, but the power is out. Water supplies are disrupted, and fuel has vanished from the market as if it had just been declared a strategic resource. A modern society, entirely reliant on regional trade, has suddenly become terrifyingly fragile, all because of a single, reckless political decision. This crisis didn't erupt with a bang. It didn't start with gunfire, but quietly crept from gas stations to wholesale markets, from power substations to the kitchens of the poor. And among all the links in this collapsing chain, the energy sector, fuel, was the first domino to fall, triggering a cascade of breakdowns beyond repair. In less than 48 hours after the border ban was issued, Cambodia's entire fuel market descended into chaos. Gas stations, which had already seen dwindling traffic, suddenly turned into gathering spots for hundreds, not to fill their tanks, but to beg for a few liters just to get by. Gas prices skyrocketed by over 40% in just 2 days. In some remote areas, people were paying nearly double the usual price for smuggled gasoline from Thailand. Beat-up motorbikes were retrofitted with extra tanks, and cargo trucks could now only afford to run half their usual routes to conserve fuel. This crisis wasn't limited to the streets. In residential neighborhoods, generators suddenly became essential commodities. Most of Cambodia's electricity, especially in western provinces like Poipet and Battambang, is directly imported from Thailand. When the power lines were cut, entire regions were plunged into darkness. Factories, industrial zones, restaurants, and hotels were forced to switch to generators. But diesel fuel for those machines quickly became scarce. Prices soared, and small businesses could do nothing but grit their teeth, cutting back power use, rotating operations, or shutting down completely. Worst hit of all was the healthcare system. District hospitals had to prioritize power for emergency rooms, while inpatient wards, operating rooms, and refrigerated storage for medicine were all forced to scale back. Meanwhile, schools were left to function in dim light and stifling heat, and in many areas, students had to stop attending altogether due to the lack of basic infrastructure. All of this triggered a breakdown in the supply chain, from production to consumption. Logistics hubs lacked fuel, trucks couldn't run, and goods stopped moving. Perishable foods spoiled without cold storage. One by one, each link in the economy began to unravel, and the entire machine seemed to grind to a halt. But the energy crisis was only the beginning. Once trade was disrupted, once fuel became expensive and unstable, the next thing to collapse was the flow of money. Over 1 million Cambodian laborers in Thailand, long seen as the living banks for their struggling families back home, were now cut off. They couldn't send money, couldn't withdraw it, couldn't bring back any support. And as the riel began to devalue and banks started limiting foreign currency transactions, the financial confidence of an entire society began to crumble. For years, remittances have been the quiet lifeblood sustaining Cambodia's economy. Nearly 1 million workers in Thailand are not just part of the country's labor exports, they are the financial backbone for millions of families back home. Every month, they send back over $2 billion, making up nearly 7% of the national GDP. But when the border closure order came down, that flow was completely severed. No more crossings, no official money transfers, and even informal channels began to wither under tightened controls. The financial shock didn't hit instantly, but within a week, banks began to feel the tremors. Foreign currency, especially US dollars, started drying up at rural branches. Many locations imposed limits on cash withdrawals and foreign exchange transactions, fueling public panic. The riel, already a fragile currency, plummeted nearly 9% against the dollar in just a month. Wages lost value by the day, while the prices of food, medicine, and other essential imports climbed without pause. A wave of anxiety swept through markets, banks, and households alike. People scrambled to buy gold, hoarded US dollars, and stashed cash at home. They no longer trusted the banking system, nor the stability of their national currency. The long queues outside ATMs weren't just about purchasing power, they were the clearest sign of crumbling faith in the entire financial system. And once the hoarding mindset spreads, once people shift into defense mode, the economy stops circulating as it should. Amid that chaos, worse began to unfold. Supply chains broke down, food shortages emerged, and hunger quietly crept into daily meals. When money stops flowing, goods no longer move as they once did. And with the Thai border sealed, Cambodia's primary source of vegetables and essential foods, every tomato, every bundle of green onions became a luxury in local markets. Across the fertile fields of Kampong Cham and Soi Rieng, farmers are still growing vegetables, still harvesting mangoes, tomatoes, and papayas. But the paradox gripping Cambodia is this: food is being grown, but it can't be eaten. Crops exist, but they can't reach the people who need them. With the Thai border closed, countless supply chains have collapsed. Trucks have no fuel to run. Wholesale markets are facing acute shortages. Mountainous and remote provinces are either enduring food prices that have soared 30% to 50% or worse, finding there's simply nothing left to buy. In many places, once common meals like a plate of grilled pork with rice or a bowl of fish noodle soup have become luxuries. Families have resorted to eating plain rice with fish sauce, or sharing a single boiled egg among 4 people. Meals, something once considered a basic certainty, have become a constant source of worry. Elderly members are skipping portions so children can eat. Street food vendors have shut down, unable to source ingredients. School lunches have been reduced, and in hospitals, even patient meals are shrinking by the day. What makes the crisis even harsher is that Cambodia lacks a strong domestic logistics network to distribute its own produce. Cold storage infrastructure is primitive, transportation options are scarce, and soaring fuel costs have made it economically unfeasible to move crops from the west to the east. Meanwhile, border markets like Poipet and Battambang, which once depended on Thailand for 70 to 80% of their food supplies, now sit empty-handed. The government has no price stabilization fund, no strategic reserves, and no long-term emergency response plan in place. Whatever aid efforts do exist are sporadic, limited, and lack coordination. People have started asking, if a single unilateral ban could bring everything crashing down, what kind of future lies ahead? In the haunting silence of kitchens without fire, in the anxious eyes of mothers dividing a too small bowl of rice among their children, Cambodia's food crisis is more than a material problem. It is a stark warning of just how fragile the entire system truly is. Thailand didn't have to do a thing, they simply stood still, and Cambodia unraveled on its own. Not a single bullet was fired, no sanctions were declared, yet the impact was more devastating than any economic assault. This crisis didn't come from the outside. It stemmed from lack of preparation, overconfidence, and a single political misstep. In an economy that relies too heavily on imports, on open borders, on foreign sources of energy and food, just one small push was enough to bring the whole system crashing down. Cambodia is now staring its own limits in the face. No independent power grid, no efficient domestic logistics chain, no strategic reserves, and no capacity to stabilize markets in times of crisis. And more critically, the government has offered no clear answers to the millions of citizens tightening their belts day after day. This isn't just a lesson for Cambodia, it's a wake-up call for any nation that places its entire economic lifeline in the hands of external partners without a backup plan. In an increasingly brutal geopolitical chessboard, it's not the strongest who will prevail. It's those who are better prepared, more flexible, and wise enough to plan during times of peace. Cambodia still has the chance to step back, course correct, and rebuild, or it can keep pushing forward until the people's endurance runs dry. The answer lies not in any foreign force, but in political will and the power of governance. If you found this story thought-provoking, leave a comment, hit like, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our next deep dive. Thanks for watching.